Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a princess doll blanket. And you'll see that I've already done 2 sections here. And what I've done is I've done a drawstring cast on, and I've not tightened it at all. And the reason being is when I go to lightly tighten it, it will tell me where I can add back on to do the faux Kitchener bind off, but it'll look good and you won't notice it. I'm changing colors with every section. You can do it all one color. This is completely up to you. But I've done a drawstring cast on with all the pegs, and the way that you can translate this blanket part to any loom is you divide the loom into 4 parts, okay, and you put a marker on your 4-part sections. Then in each part you're going to divide it in half and put a marker in the half point sections, and this will give you your sections. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 markers, and your last and first peg doesn't need markers. And these markers are going to be important. They're going to be quick to tell you how far you need to go and that kind of thing. But I did a drawstring cast on, and then I did an E-wrap. And in fact, I need to do an E-wrap. And when you're coming back from here, you're always going to skip the first peg, okay? And by skipping the first peg, you're allowing a very easy, almost crochet kind of edge here. And this might be beneficial if at the finish of it you want to add a really nice crochet edge to it. So it'll make it easier in that area. So I'm going to skip that one because I'm going back to my starting point. Okay, and by the way, if you were wondering what loom I'm using the 54 peg 3/8 inch, and I am E-wrapping. And you'll notice it won't divide up into 4 real easily. So if you're wondering what I did, I went in and I counted 14 over, then 13, then 13, then 14, and then I counted from my starting point 7, and then it's go to the next one, count 7 over, go to the next marker and then count 7 over, go to the next marker and count 7 over. That'll give you an idea of how to go about that. If it's a little off, it's okay. We're not doing anything truly distinctive between those markers. Those markers are giving us a general idea so that we have a nice smooth triangle, as you can see here. It doesn't lean really one particular direction. Okay, I finished with my green. It's time for me to change my color. I'm going to be using the magic knot. And when it's on the loom and you don't have any room to really do this, I usually do the half knot with my new color. Push it all the way down to the base and almost tight. Then take scissors, snip the end, and then wrap it around and shove through the hole. So I basically do a half knot around the yellow. But what I like to do is pull as far as I can and keep my finger at the base as much as I can and tighten. Then I can pull, and that way you can get the closest possible magic knot to the base on changing color. I like a real inconspicuous change, and what you're going to find is this end is what's going to go around your animal. And just so you know, you can do this you can take any of my stuffed animal patterns you've seen, do the head, the body, and the arms, and you can attach it the same way I'm going to show you how to do a princess. So if you want to do an animal one, this is how to go about doing it. Okay, so I've changed my color. I'm now going to E-wrap all the way around. I'm giving you a basic concept just so you know. Feel free to, once you get the basic concept and figure it out, you can add your own stitches to it. You can do the seed stitch, you can do a garter stitch, that kind of thing. So I'm just giving you a real basic on how to go about this. This is a guide. Take it and run with it. This is just to help you get a general idea about how to go about making this. Okay. Now we're going to get started with the pattern that we're going to be doing. What you're going to do is you're going to skip that first peg and you're going to E-wrap over to your first stitch marker and you're going to stop. Then you're going to toss the bottom loop over. Wrap and turn the next peg, E-wrap back to the end. Okay, what this wrap and turn does is it also doesn't add a hole, but also tells you where you just finished, okay, and where you're going to go next. So I'm going to skip that first one, and I'm going to E-wrap over to the next stitch marker. Stop. Toss the bottom loop, and on that wrap and turn peg, just go ahead and toss both loops over. Okay, then you wrap and turn the next peg and E-wrap all the way back. And as you'll notice, what we're starting to do is build layer by layer, kind of a pie piece. And with what the technique we're doing right now is only building up the first half of the pie. Okay, that tells us we finished at that stitch marker. We know we need to go to the next one. And we're going to go stitch marker by stitch marker. The next one, then the next one, then the next one, and you're always going to go all the way back to here. Okay, and that builds it up. Okay, that builds it up to the point. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more time. Skip the first one, E-wrap over. We know we finished there last because that wrap and turn. So we keep going to the very next marker. We're going to stop. I like to push my stitches up, makes it easier to toss that bottom loop over. Okay, wrap and turn the next peg and E-wrap yourself all the way back. You're going to continue to do this until you get to your starting point, and you'll E-wrap all the way to the starting point and E-wrap all the way back, and then we'll get started with the other half of the pie. This is really not a bad spiral blanket. It will take time though. If you want this simplified, again, follow my specs on divide the pegs into 4. Put your markers there. Then divide the 4th sections in half again. Put markers in those half sections. And then you'll do the same concept. You don't have to have the exact peg count. You do the same concept. So you can do this bigger or smaller on different gauge or not. I'm using a baby yarn, so I wanted to use a smaller gauge. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, and continue. We know we did that one last, we need to go to the next one, wrap and turn and go back, and then we go to the next one, wrap and turn and go back, go to the next one, wrap and turn and go back, go to the next one, wrap and turn and go back, and go all the way to the starting point, and then all the way back, and I'll be ready to show you how to do the other half of the pie. Let's go ahead and pause the video and get that far, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I am now halfway done with my section, and so we need to do the other half of the section. So basically what we've done is, when you say look at this green one, we've just completed from here over. Now we need to complete from here over. And so how we're going to do this is we're going to basically be reversing how we've done our rows. Okay, so I'm back over here. So after I E-wrapped all the way over to here, I E-wrapped all the way back. Okay, how this is going to work differently to do the other half is you're going to be going all the way around to this stitch marker, wrapping and turning and going all the way back, then going all the way around, going to this stitch marker, wrap and turning the next peg and going all the way back, and you're going to go back and back and back and back and back until you're back here, and then you're going to E-wrap all the way over and change color or stay with how you're doing it. So let's show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to E-wrap all the way over to this stitch marker over here. Skip my first peg and E-wrap over. And there's our stitch marker from our starting point over here. So I'm going to toss all our loops over. Okay, you're going to wrap and turn the next peg, and what this is going to tell you, this is the last stitch marker you did this on, so that you know that if you go past the one you need to go to next, that you've gone too far and you need to unwrap. So this is a marker in a way to do the wrap and turn. So go ahead and E-wrap your way back, and you'll know that you'll be hitting this stitch marker next time round. And don't touch that wrap and turn. Okay, now we know we need to E-wrap all the way to this stitch marker because we've already E-wrapped to that one. So we're going to and we're going to E-wrap to the next one back. Skip the first one. E-wrap your way back. There's one I need to stop at, and there's the previous one I did. So I'm going to stop here, toss that one over, and then I know for the next one I'll need to come back and end with this one. You're going to keep going to the previous one and the previous one until you're back to your end point, and that gets you the other half of the triangle. Okay, you're going to wrap and turn and E-wrap your way back. And so what you're going to do is you're going to keep going, and when you're done with this row, then you're going to E-wrap to this one to stop, and then wrap and turn and E-wrap back. And then after you do that one, the next section is this one. And then the next section is this one here. And the next section is this one, which should be next to your last one. And here's your last one, which should be your next section. Once you've done that, once you've gone and done the short rows all the way back to here, and you've done your wrap and turn, and you're all the way back to here, then you're going to wrap all the way around like I showed you at the very beginning, and that's where you know you can change color or you can keep going with the one you've got. So go ahead and pause the video and continue doing this until you have a full circle. Okay, I'm finally coming back to this to finish up showing you how to do the skirt or blanket part of this. I ended up doing 4 sections for a quarter of a circle, so I ended up doing 4 sections of it, a total of 4 times, to get a complete circle. And now it's time for me to close at the end. Now, you could just cast it off, bind off, and then sew the ends together if you want to do that. But for me personally, I want it flatter and less noticeable. And so what I've done is I brought up the sections in between my drawstring cast on up. And a lot of times when you pull it, you'll see a notch and a line and a notch. You want to put that line on the peg, which is what I've got. And a lot of times you can pull and it'll tighten. And so what I've done is I've gone around and I've done that. And you may find your short on one end or the other. You can always add an extra to line it up from a little further below, but I wouldn't suggest doing it 3 or 4 if you've only got one that you need. So that's my only suggestion if you've got one. Again, you can just bind off and sew it together, but you will have a seam. Doing it this way, where I'm fixing to do the Kitchener weave, this isn't a proper Kitchener bind off. This is a Kitchener weave bind off. It will be smoother and less noticeable. So what you want to do is you want to go in and you want to put the section that's in between the notches onto the peg. Let me see if I can pull one off and show you. Reason why I've gone ahead and done it, it's pretty tedious. Okay. Let's see. Start on this end. Okay. Here we go. Okay. You'll see, here's a notch, and here's a notch. Okay, and I don't know if you can tell it real well, but there is a strand in between, and if you pull on it, you'll notice you'll see it tighten, and you'll see it show up here too. Here's a notch, and here's a notch, and here's the connector. Okay, these connectors are what you want to put on the loom. Okay, so here's the notch, here's a notch. You're going to pick up that connector and put it on the loom. You're going to pick up that connector and put it on the loom. And so forth. The ends are going to be more complicated, but if you can get it close, it works still just fine. Okay, so that's what you're going to do all the way around. You're going to find those notches, and then you're going to find that strand that goes through, because I did a drawstring cast on. And so you'll have the drawstring itself that you're going to be pulling from to pull it back on. So I've already got my needle threaded and everything, and I'm ready to get started. I've attached it, and I've got a really long strand because I don't know how long this is going to take, how long of a bit of string it's going to take to get around all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by sending the needle through the bottom loop and pull it through. Again, you can bind off and sew up, but you will have a seam that shows. This one will hide it more where it's not as obvious. Okay. So you send it through the bottom loop. Now we're going to send it through the top loop. And so we've done a knit. We're going to do another knit. Okay, then we're going to go over to the next peg and we're going to do a purl, which means you're going to send it from the bottom up on that top one and pull through. Okay, then you're going to go back to the previous peg and you're going to send it through the bottom stitch like a purl. So it's going to go up through the bottom, through the top. Okay, so it's going to be a purl through the previous bottom stitch. Problem is you need a full single strand to do this, so it may get a little tangled up here and there trying to do that. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go back over to the second peg and you're going to send it through the bottom stitch like a knit. Okay, then this is where you're going to knit the top again. Okay, so you're going to go back up and you're going to knit the top stitch like a knit. Okay. Then you're going to go over to the next peg and you're going to purl the top stitch. Okay. The thing to keep in mind is that you're doing a send the needle through a knit knit and send the needle through a purl purl. Okay, so there is my purl. Now I want to go back to the previous peg and send the needle through the bottom. So I can loosen that up. Send the needle through the bottom stitch like a purl, like that. Okay, so there's my purl purl. Keep in mind your purl purl will show up on two different pegs. Your knit knit will show up on the same peg. That's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, now that we're done with that, we have completed a set. Okay, so you're going to start to notice this is the beginning of the pattern. So you're going to go into that bottom stitch on that peg, that same peg, and you're going to knit through the top. Then you're going to go in and send the needle through the top again, but on the top stitch, so as a knit. So remember your knit knits on the same peg. Now we're going to go over to the next peg and we're going to purl the top stitch. And then we're going to go back to the previous peg because our purls are done on different pegs, and we're going to purl the bottom stitch. Okay, and this completes the pattern. All right, so keep in mind it's a knit, knit, purl, purl. Your knits are on the same peg, your purls are on an alternate peg. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my stitches on these. I've completed. Okay. Now we're going to go in and we're going to repeat the pattern again. So we're going to take the bottom stitch and we're going to knit it, which sends the needle through the top of the stitch. Then we're going to send the needle through the top, like a knit, through the top stitch. Remember, your knit, knit is on the same peg. Now we're going to do a purl, purl. So we're going to go over to the top of the next one. So the thing to keep in mind is wherever you finished last, you're going to go over to the next, and you're going to do a purl on the top, because you just finished with the top. And naturally, to go and purl from the next peg, you're going to go to the bottom. Okay, and you're going to purl that bottom stitch there. You're going to send it up through the bottom there. Again, this is more time consuming, but it does make for a nicer look when completed. Okay. Now we're starting the pattern over again. I'm going to show you this one more time. You're going to knit through the bottom. Just send it through the bottom, top to bottom, and the bottom stitch. Okay, then you're going to go and send the needle through the top stitch like a knit. Remember, your knit is on the same, your knits are on the same peg. Then you're going to go over to the next peg and follow it over to the top stitch. You're going to purl, which means you're going to send the needle up through the bottom of the stitch and pull it through. Then you're going to go back to the previous peg and purl through the bottom of the bottom stitch. So you're going to send the needle through the bottom of the bottom stitch to complete the pattern. Okay. And send it through. And this gets you back to your repeat. Now if you'll notice, I've been going in, I've been tightening it periodically so that when I'm ready I can just take them all off the peg. Alright, so go ahead, pause the video, and do this all the way around until you cannot repeat this pattern anymore. And then what you'll do is you'll go in and you'll take all this off the pegs, and then you can lay it flat, so that the next section we're going to get started on is the actual doll part that will bring all this together. Okay, so go ahead and finish closing up the blanket however way you like, you'll notice there's a hole in the middle. This is going to attach to your doll. So go ahead, finish this up, and I'll show you how to start on the actual doll part. I'm going to be using the 36 peg 3/8 inch gauge loom. Okay. If you don't have either one of these, and you might like to get one that's more universal, Cindy Wood has got the 90 peg 3/8 inch gauge loom, and it's adjustable here, and that can adjust to whatever number pegs this is to whatever number peg that is. And so that'll make it a little easier if you want to get a loom that is more universal, and this is considered the universal hat loom. So if you don't want to pay for two separate looms, I prefer circular. If you don't want to pay for two separate looms, get this one. It's the 90 peg 3/8 inch gauge as a suggestion. But once you're done, be prepared to pull out the 36 peg loom, and I will show you how to make the actual doll part of it. Okay, you can see barely here that this is where I've done my Kitchener weave, and that makes it pretty invisible without having to do anything really special to hide it, because I find when you do the proper Kitchener bind off on the looms, it to prep your side, it can get a little more complicated, and so you could call this my cheat, but you barely notice it, but it's right there. And I'm sure once you block this, you're barely gonna see it. Now this is a pretty big blanket. If you don't want to go this big and you want to follow this concept, and you don't want to work on two different looms, you can work on the 36 peg loom, and I'll tell you how to set up your markers. So first thing you want to do is divide the 36 pegs in half, and it's 18, so you'll count over 18. Put a marker there. Okay, 18 divided by 2 is 9. So you go to the marker here and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. Put a marker there. And to keep it correct on this side, we're going to start on the opposite side of here, and you're going to count over 9. And place a marker there. Okay. So because 9 doesn't divide up evenly in your sections, one side is going to be bigger than the other. So basically I'm going to count 5 from my starting point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And place a marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Place a marker. Then I'm going to come up to this marker, and I'm going to count the next stitch over, the next peg over from my marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and you can see it divides it up fairly evenly, and so you're going to follow the same procedure. You're just going to draw string, cast on, flat all the way back, and then you're going to E-wrap all the way over, and then you're going to start your E-wrap to here, wrap and turn, E-wrap to here, wrap and turn. You're going to follow the same process. You're just working with less pegs. So if you want to do a smaller blanket in the skirting area, and it'll take less time to do it this way, that's how you're going to set up your markers. Just divide your pegs in half and put a marker on that, count it up to that number, put a marker, divide that number in half, put a marker on that number, and then count from the other side and put the number on that marker. And then you divide that in half, and because it doesn't come up evenly, you round it up. And so I think it was 4.5, and I counted over 5 and put a marker. Go to the next section, count over 5. So you're basically splitting it up into little sections, and that's how you do it. If you want to do it on another loom, you can. doing that same technique and everything, but that kind of gives you an idea about how to go about making this blanket if you don't want it that big on a smaller format. But in the meantime, go ahead and go to part 2 on the video to make the actual doll section, and we'll be working with this loom again.